As many of y'all, or I think most of y'all are aware of, that since normally we do not have a quorum on the commission at this time due to a lack of appointments from the legislature, the commission is unable to convene and conduct formal business for purposes of taking votes. However, in order to effectively keep things moving forward and be ready to take those votes once we hopefully get those elections done by the legislature in January, we are still taking informational meetings. So the purpose of today is an informational meeting. As such, it will be handled a little bit more casually in terms of things that, for example, we can't even vote formally to adopt an agenda. We can't take any votes. So things are just going to be a little bit less formal today. And we will go through and take that information and have an exchange in that. We are going to go ahead though and still do a notice of meeting statement. I would ask Commissioner Unum to please read that for us.
A news release announcing the date, time, and place of the October 17th, 2019 informational commission meeting was distributed October 15th, 2019 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
And I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the introduction of guests. If we can start our front right here, we can just introduce the audience.
Rufus Brett, DDSN.
Ron McMurray, DDSN.
Pat Manley, DDSN.
Susan Beth, DDSN.
Lori Manus, DDSN.
Joyce Kimmery, DDSN.
Chris Clark, DDSN.
Sarah Brownson, Spinal Cord Injury Association.
Susan Davis, CVR.
Lynn Sig, DDSN.
DDSN.
Morning, Kathleen Roberts, Witness Center Parents Club.
Linda Lee, Witness Center Parents Club.
Adam Rankin, DDSN IT.
Audrey Farrell, DDSN IT.
Lindsay Daniel, Community Action.
Dawn Johnson, Florence County DSN.
Joyce Davis, Brain Injury Association of South Carolina.
Kelly Cox, Ad Coach.
Shantina J, Lee County DSN.
Zenobia Corley, the Kershaw Center.
Stacy Johnson, Rich Flags.
Ansley Patrick, the Unum Center.
Terry Todd, Bright Start.
What we warned about that for
Tim Newman, Adult Spectrum Transitions.
Tyler Rex, Thrive Upstate.
Debbie Wilson, DSN.
Michelle Schaefer, Maximilian.
Susan John, Horry County.
Thank you. I'm not sure how DDSN managed to sort of go off the first row.
They have reserves.
Yeah, we put them there.
I was not notified of anyone who is seeking to have any public input at this meeting. Was there anyone who wished to have any public input? That form was not submitted to me. Anyone? Okay, all right. Is there any update from commissioners at this time?
I have a question. I was in touch with the Angel House, the respite house that Lutheran families operate, and was notified that they're closing down. Is that right? And I wonder if we could get some information about that.
Have not received anything in writing to that effect, which is a prerequisite. If they intend to breach their contract, they need to inform us in writing. So I received a similar notification from a colleague at DSS, and so we reached out to LFS for, if they intend to terminate that service line, they need to let us know.
So it's not DDSN telling them they need to shut down, it's them, okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
And unfortunately, with the late arrival, you have to still introduce yourself, so.
My name is Ann Connor-Schisler. I represent Aging with Flair and Behaviors That Go.
Thank you. No, you're fine, you're fine. Just like everybody who's here. Anything else from an update standpoint, Lauren?
No, I don't.
Okay. Mary, if we could have a commissioner's update.
That is director's.
Oh, sorry, state director's report. See, this is what happens when I don't have an agenda.
That's what happens when you get informal.
Yes. State director's report.
All right. We have the budget presentation to the Executive Budget Office on October 29th. And our budget hearing at the Senate is December 11th, if I'm not mistaken. We also continue to hold our public meetings, our information meetings with our three very dedicated commissioners. I appreciate your support. This allows us time to utilize information we have uncovered over the past year, our risk, lack of accountability, internally as well as externally. So basically what I'm saying is we should have a voting quorum come January, because we do have names and we are asking the Senate Medical Affairs Subcommittee to hear, to do a hearing for our individual at that time. But, we're not just sitting idly by waiting for that to happen. There's a lot of prep time that needs to go into getting things ready for launch, which is what the commission would do. They would formally launch whatever we're doing. And so we are basically working on gathering that information, looking at our risks, the lack of accountability we've seen internally as well as externally. Basically, we have found that we don't always follow our own rules that are already written down. It's not a matter of building new rules, it's a matter of following the rules that are there. We need to tighten all this stuff up for y'all. We're reviewing the RFP, the contract language, as well as service definitions, regulations, and standards. So we're in the process of looking at all that stuff. And Rob, can you tell me the date, since we're informal, I didn't write it down, the date of the first meeting that I have to talk to families?
November 7th.
November 7th, I'll be in Newberry County talking to families about what is useful to them on the waiver, what isn't useful as we move forward to waiver renewal time, to make sure that we get services that are useful and effective for our families. Because we haven't really looked at this stuff for quite some time, I think since the 90s. So we want to do that. We continue to work with DHHS to get through that current split rate system where we have monies that come to us and monies that we pass through as far as the rate goes. So we can sign the admin contract, which is basically written, but we can't sign it, one, until we have a commission, but two, until we fix the rate situation where we're not living in a split rate world anymore. So we're doing this time to do that work. And the day programs, EI 3 to 6, residential are all currently split rates. So the residential rates are extremely problematic since the split rate no longer covers the cost. What we get from HHS no longer covers the cost as to what we pay out. That's a problem. We pay in a capitated model, but we are reimbursed by HHS in a fee-for-service model. A system like ours takes constant analysis to ensure rates being received are in line with what is being paid out. The failure of the agency to complete cost reports and do this important analysis has placed us in a precarious position at the moment. Completed cost reports for 2016 and 2017 indicate there is plenty of Medicaid costs in the system to have warranted a rate increase for this agency. We are in the process of doing just that for this fiscal year. We're requesting that rate increase based on our current and completed cost reports. We'll have a planning day away from the office on October 28th to discuss all these issues and put them in a plan, so no issue falls off the radar. We're going to have to prioritize what is more important to work on, because we can't work on everything, but we need to have some sort of list so we don't lose something along the way. And at the January commission meeting, we'll be able to present that plan to validation to our commission. Case management EI rate increases are to include the 2%, but cannot change until January 1st. However, we will be presenting the commission a plan to divide the unused portion of the appropriation from July 1 to December 30. And no plan will include DDSN keeping that portion of the appropriation. Chris just gave me a number. He says he believes that number is going to be around $221,000. We'll continue to have our work group sessions and communication meetings. They're well attended and participation is really good. The QA work group is currently getting themselves into smaller subcommittees to begin a review of the current quality indicators in an effort to structure them so they're clear, concise, and they measure what needs to be measured so we can drive performance and improve outcomes. The case management group has been asked to engage in the QA work group subcommittees because a lot of the indicators fall on case management entities, as does the EI work group. The EI work group has decided to meet quarterly while keeping their counterpart meetings going. The finance directors work group is thriving. It's one of the best attended meetings we have because we found that finance directors are just really hungry for information. Those meetings at this point are more informational and training in nature versus working on a specific project. Now, this is just something Robin and I were talking prior to this meeting. The December meeting, which is holiday time, we're asking for the agencies with that entrepreneurial spirit. So Bamberg maybe they took an old bracelet that had broken for me and they redid it in the colors because it's Down Syndrome Awareness Month, by the way. And so this says Down Syndrome Mom, but if it's upside down, it says Down Syndrome, wow, so one way or the other, it's good. But, so I've been wanting to wear this bracelet for a couple of years. They fixed it and put it together for me, and they've made necklaces and bracelets in the colors of Down Syndrome Awareness Month. And I know they make beautiful jewelry. I've worn it before. I've purchased it before. And I know that other boards and other entities, QPLs, all have these little businesses that they do. So we're gonna hold a holiday fair. And we're gonna use our lobby, our hallways to set up tables. I'll be sending out forms and instructions at the beginning of November for you to ask to hold a place for you. And you'll be able to sell your wares in our lobby. And hopefully we can get a big crowd of folks in here to do that. And we can do a little Christmas shopping on work time. There you go. I think that's great. And that's really all I have. So it's just a lot of work going on behind the scenes, kind of digging down into stuff.
Any questions regarding the state director report? Let's move on to our next update from Chris Clark, the agreed upon procedures.
All right, well, this is not in your packet. I apologize for that, but the report is available online on the state auditor's website. State auditor annually has to perform a series of agreed upon procedures on every state agency that's included in the state's CAFR, or their comprehensive annual financial report. Ours was started in June, about a week after I got here. They had an opening, our opening planning meeting, and they completed it on September 4th. So it took them about 3 months to complete it. We do have a formal report. As an auditor, with my background, I was very pleased with the results. They did a very thorough series of procedures, and their materiality was only $1,000 for an agency this size. That's itty bitty. Some of these agencies, that's even big for most, or small in here for most of these agencies in the room. But we did have a few things that came up, but they're nothing to be alarmed over. I was going to go over those with you real quick. They looked at 25 cash deposits or receipts, and 3 of the 25 were reported to the wrong account. We put them in sales of goods instead of sales of services account. I'm just kind of splitting hair a little bit, but it is what it is. Next thing is they were unable to find some documentation for some payments related to 3 new hires and 2 termination paybacks. Four of the discrepancies were less than $30 a piece and related to shift differentials. And the 5th discrepancy was for a couple $100, but they were unavailable to determine what that was actually paid for. So that one had no backup that they could locate, or that we could locate. The agency enters into a bunch of leases, as you might imagine, for copiers, postage machines, you name it. There is no formal tracking process when I got here in regards to those documents. We have since implemented that. Even prior to this taking place, we were working on that to centralize collection and a repository for this information. But we could not get our hands on all the lease documents that had been signed in years past. So they didn't give us, just two of the leases we couldn't locate out of probably over 100. And then accounts payable, there was a $4,000 bill that was paid after the end of the year that did not get pulled back into the year properly. We have an issue with our bank reconciliation process. They call it a composite reservoir account, which is our consumer funds account. We've had some issues there with our software. We're in the process of implementing a brand new program through Therap called Intact. But we've had some issues in finance. This is a repeat finding that 4 of 8 reconciliations were not prepared timely. So we're going to do some cross-training on that. We're going to set up some procedures to ensure that there's a review of that to ensure it's done within the compliance with our own policy. We were unable to provide them documentation to support 1 of 5 capital asset disposals that they reviewed. So that could have been a, just something thrown away or, antiquated or destroyed. We had a building that was destroyed and there was a generator associated with that facility, and the generator was accidentally disposed as well, even though it got moved to another building. So we've had to add that back on our depreciation schedule, and we're working with personnel to ensure there's a reporting process and awareness of that, the need to communicate that type of information. That is my report. I did want to say in closing, though, I really want to thank Kelly Anderson and her team for spearheading this. Kelly was brand new too. She started in March, and then Tom Ritter, our finance director, left in June. So she had a nice welcoming committee as well. But I really want to thank her and her team for stepping up and getting this done, and for the good results.
Any questions regarding the state auditor's report? All right, let's move on to the financial update then, Chris.
Okay. Under tab 2 is the financial update that you're accustomed to seeing. I'm still working on the format for this, and have actually begun that process with our budget director who initiates this document. So hopefully come next month, you'll have a little bit more information, maybe a little bit easier to read as well. Just a couple of things I'd like to highlight under the budget adjustments. Under Children's Services, we had some federal authorization there related to IDEA funds that were typically awarded for and distributed for summer programs. That funding lapsed and is no longer available to us beginning this fiscal year. So we've moved that $200,000 to other areas to cover generators and other federal funds that we anticipate getting. Let's see. We added the, down under the very last line, South Carolina Genomic Project. That's the pass-through funds for Greenwood Genetics Center. We added that. We actually paid that out in October. So you'll see that show up as fully expended on the next report. That's just pass-through funds. They give it to us. We turn around and give it to them. Let's see. We also, all those big adjustments in the middle related to updating the budget for the pay raises and fringe increases that we were appropriated through the state appropriation. You'll have to note that does not include the Medicaid portion. We're still negotiating the Medicaid portion of all of those increases. At this point, we're not funded, but 30% of all those cost increases. So we're out the other 70 at this point until those rates start flowing. Overall, we're almost 2% below budget, which is good after the first quarter. So we're running around 23% of our expenses with a target percentage of 25. Cash is looking good at this point. We are going to have to start monitoring that really closely, probably in a couple months, just to make sure. We do feel like our cash positions will be much better this year because of a lot of things that Mary and Pat and Rufus have done. As well as us closing up some of the other gaps that we've identified that are going to hit us, benefit us in our cash account. So if there's not any questions, that's my report.
I know that one thing that looking at a lot of sort of legacy payments contracts are going out. How's that going?
I think Pat and Mary probably best answer that. I don't think we've had any issues with.
No, the contracts we pretty much tightened up, and for the ones that we want to revisit, we've been asking, I think we have one more thing we have to deal with, is that caregiver program that, what is it called, the WOW program? Is it the WOW program? Yeah, okay, yeah. that Babcock's calling that it's the legacy program from the caregiver relief. We don't want people to lose service, but we want to make sure that if they're waiver eligible, they're getting in the waiver, we're paying for it via the waiver. So we're looking at that. We're still working with them on that. But the other contracts have been cleaned up. What we're finding now is that our big issue is recoupments that have not done over the course of the years, like day program attendance recoupments. And we'll have to have a discussion about what we do with those, and that would be withheld until January to give you all the information, because that's going to require a vote.
Let's move on to the next item, which is the budget proposal.
Okay, this was presented to the Finance and Audit Committee in an earlier meeting, not today, but I can't remember the date of that meeting. But anyways, y'all have seen this already. I will go ahead and hit some highlights on here, though, for purposes of everyone else that's in attendance and refreshing your memory. First thing I'd like to point out is the budget request is split up into two pieces. First part is for recurring funds, and the last part is for non-recurring funds. Y'all may not be accustomed to seeing the non-recurring. That's something we've added this year to try to tap into some of those one-time funding availabilities that Rob is convinced that we might have a good shot at getting some of those. Because the state looks for projects to fund just for one and done type things. Under the recurring, we have first priority is our residential rate, service rate increase. We believe that the Mercer report is going to show that our rates are too low. And we know for a fact that our cost reports are showing that our rates are too low. So this is a step of a multi-year strategy to try and address the hole in residential funding at this time. So we're still working with HHS, and we might be able to go back and ask for more money prior to the actual budget going through the full process. But at this point, we're proposing a $10 million first step towards that, and then this would bump up provider rates for residential services. And another thing I want to mention is the funds are split into state funds and federal Medicaid match. Some of these funds are not matchable and some are. So as you go down here, you'll see, you might wonder why the federal match is blank. It's because we can't draw down federal match with that. Second priority is related to respite. We've had a large increase in utilization that we need to address that is not adequately funded at this time. So the second part of that, the $2.3 million, is to address that utilization issue so that we can increase funding to providers for that cost overrun. And the other piece is we're wanting to address the rate that we're paying the respite caregivers and bump them up to a minimum $12 an hour rate. But we want to put enough money in the rate that the providers are getting that they have adequate funds to cover all their costs plus a profit, which we're calling equity return in here. So the goal is to give enough money that it's worth providers offering this service. If all they're doing is getting reimbursed their cost or even losing money, they're not going to want to provide the payroll service. The third item is,
How does that
yes.
equity return going to be viewed? I mean, it's surplus, right?
It's not much. It's what?
I think we said our
4 or 5%.
Can't remember the numbers. We built out this 15.41. The issue is, in all of our contracts, providers are able to retain a certain percentage unless it's a special contract, which is a dollar for dollar spending requirement. So that's already in all of our service mix, really. So I don't think it's going to be, the legislature might need some convincing or educating on that, but I think HHS will be fine with it.
Yeah, that's the big element. I mean, I want to.
Yeah, we reviewed this with HHS.
Okay.
Yeah, and basically we want to fix what happened last time when they said that we want to pay providers of respite. There was a lot of problems. Words matter. And when they said the provider of respite, the provider could be the person employing the individual, or it could be the individual themselves. And when we said that you had to pay $11.30, that left $0 to actually pay for the cost of an employee and put a lot of the burden on the families to become the employers of these folks. Now we're hoping to bring more actual companies back in, the boards back in, everybody back into the pool, because you'll have the money now to actually pay for those employees and the workers' comp and all the other issues that go along with it.
And that fair equity return is for boards or qualified providers, right?
Yes, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
But we'd like to set a floor as to what you need to pay those respite caregivers. But then if you think about it too, we also pay our direct support. We don't want to compete with our own employees doing a different job, so, which requires a lot more training and a lot more responsibility. So we just kind of walk that line between the two.
Good to move on. Okay, item 3 is early intervention utilization. We have to keep an eye on folks tapping into that service and what it's doing to our budget. Based on a historical trend, we're projecting a 13% increase in utilization, so we need to ask for those funds so that we'll have the dollars to pay for those services as they're rendered. Next page, item 4, we do need to develop some specialized residential placement opportunities for 28 individuals is our goal. You can see the different types of facilities and consumer populations we're hoping to place. And we feel like our existing residential vacancies are not adequate to either meet the needs of the special population, and in addition to that, our water level on our existing vacancies is a normal level. So as we churn it, and as people come and go, that's kind of a natural vacancy that we expect to see. And so that's not good enough to address the new needs that we see that are out there. Item 5, we need additional waiver slots. We do have some extras left based on what's already been approved, but at our usage level, we're projecting we're going to run out of slots mid next year. So we need another HASKI, yeah. We need 43 more slots so that we can have enough to get us through June 2021.
This is going to be an education. We're going to have to, I realize this after talking to a couple of legislators who asked, why do we need more HASKI waiver slots? We fixed that a couple of years ago. In other words, we got rid of the waiting list. And I really kind of was taken aback because my answer was people continue to have motorcycle and car accidents. I mean, and we're going to need more waiver slots because people continue to be born with disabilities. And I think that it just kind of showed me an underlying, they think it's one and done. And it's, you know, when you're dealing with lifelong disabilities, it's never one and done. So we have to, this is an educational push too. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon the commission members that we have to reach out to legislators, to remind them this is a lifelong disability. People keep coming into the service delivery system. More people come in than exit. So we need to remember that churn is not always there. And so that it's a little bit different than, say, nursing home beds or something like that has a kind of literally an end of life situation. And so I just saw that as a huge educational opportunity when I was speaking to them. So just a word out to everybody, it's the same thing. You got to tell them this is not done. It'll never be done.
All right. Item 6 was basically something we were told to add to our budget because HHS has negotiated some rate increases on 3 different services. So we have to build it into our budget so that they can allocate those funds to those waiver services. And you can see there, private duty nursing proposing to increase 50. I don't think these are done yet though, right? These are still being negotiated at HHS.
Yeah.
Or they're already.
But they just gave us they know it's happening, so they gave us what the impact will be on us.
And then attendant care, 5% increase, and adult day health care rate increase 15%. So that is, we've made that a last priority for recurring, next to last priority for recurring funds because that is just something, that's really not our ask. That's something we had to add.
And it's going to have to flow into our budget.
Yeah, so we don't want to put that real high up on the list and then like, well, we gave you $18 million. We're not going to do anything else. Item 7 is
Can I just say one more
yes.
thing about that last ask? Well, I want, you know, The fact that we're working so closely with HHS now, we got all this before our budget went in. In previous years, we were playing catch-up for these kind of increases. We're running after them after the fact. So it's kind of nice that they said, okay, they gave us a call. This is what we're discovering. We're going to have to put in our budget. We're holding our budget. And that's why we had to meet again, because we had to hold our budget a couple of days to get this all in here. But if we didn't have that relationship, we'd be chasing this thing later on when we find out we didn't have the money to cover the increases they're putting into their budget. So I do appreciate them letting us know, and the fact that they answer the phone when we ask, and they call and they tell us what's going on. I think that's a really important relationship that has been solidified.
Did they say what the ABA rate increase is? I know that
No,
doesn't run through.
they didn't say that to me, but I know there is one coming. And this adult day healthcare rate increase is for transportation. And when he told me that, I said, you know, every provider in the DDSN network is gonna be furious with you over this. And he goes, why? I said, because we don't get, you say there's transportation in our rates, but we know there's not. So we're coming back. So I hope that everywhere I go, people talk about transportation as a way for service for non-medical work issues. So I think there's a lot of things we need to fix. So I'm looking forward to those meetings. But I do appreciate them actually giving that heads up information on that.
All right, we have a post-acute specialized rehab program that we have for our TBI and spinal cord injured population, and you know, it's been proven medically, I guess, that the folks that get rehab right after their accident have a better chance of recovery, and we're seeing an uptick in utilization of that program as well. So we're looking at adding another $500,000. We've been incrementing it by that amount for several years, and just looking at our numbers served thus far this year, we've served 25 folks instead of 15. So we do feel like that money is necessary, and that's why we have added that in there. And then item 8 again is just a formality. It's as we add waiver slots, folks to our waiver enrollment, we have to pick up all the state plan medical costs. They bill us for hospital visits, broken arms, ambulance trips, all that. And so they give us money, match money, which helps us draw down federal dollars to help pay for that state plan. We are looking at that though to see if we're getting adequate funding there. We don't think that first filled slots amount has not been changed in years and years and years. And even Josh Baker, when we met with him, kind of smiled and said, yeah, that's a really old number. So we need to look at that. All right, and then our non-recurring requests, electrical grid at Coastal Center. We do have an electrical grid situation at 2 of our centers. We're trying to address one of them this year, and this is the other one that needs to be done. It's very expensive, and Andrew's not in here to give you all the details to that if you have specific questions, but it's a capital project basically. Item 10 is to give us some funding to provide to the providers when we transfer these 65 facilities that we maintain, that they operate. This is based on our historical maintenance costs over a period of time, and so we're asking for funds so we can give out some money when we transfer those. When and if. I mean, it sounds like that's going to happen, but not sure when exactly. And then finally, the year 2 of the Greenwood Genetics Center, I think, is wanting to accomplish a 5-year funding program for this $2 million. This is they only were awarded 1 year worth of those funds last year or the year we're in now. So they have to go back each year and re-ask for it. It's not been awarded to them on a recurring basis. So this is just year 2 of that project that they're asking for. They'll be attending the hearing, the executive budget office meeting on the 29th with us to present their own ask for that.
Any additional questions since the committee meeting on this?
No,
So I think I did do have one though, actually. On the EI, I think it was 3. For ages 3 to 6. So when we pay the EIs for that, it's a different system than what they've now had to get used to. The HHS is paying for 0 to 3, right?
Correct.
So they'll, okay, I just was
Yeah,
curious if
0
they
to
were
3
still getting.
is BabyNet, and
Right,
that's HHS.
right,
We are 3 to 6.
right. So I just was wondering about, are we a pass-through on the 3 to 6 children to EIs, as opposed to how they have to go directly to DHHS for 0
Yeah,
to 3?
they bill,
payments.
we generate the invoice and we pay that. Yeah, so it's a completely different system. We're just seeing an uptick in utilization, and again, a lot of this budget, if you look at it, is really just picking up on stuff that should have been asked for years ago by analyzing the usage and the utilization. And as utilization goes up, you need to keep funding, matching it. And we were just going into our vault, I guess, and picking it up, but we need to, there's no more there. I checked, there's not even a basement in this building, and it's a flat roof, so there's not any special buildings up there either holding cash. We got an issue. We will be going to DHHS too and asking them for additional funds to increase the residential rate so that we can generate some cash. We're fine now, but we probably will have a problem at the end of the year. So we're just paying out more than we're getting in for the services. Pay an average of what, $200 an average for a residential day?
I don't have the average number, I just know
It's
that
around 2, and we're getting back
187.
187.66. So you can't do that for long. That's a leak. We gotta fix it. And the other issue is with attendance in the programs where folks aren't there 100% and we only get paid back from HHS when the attendance gets checked off. So if the person's not there, we've already pushed out the payment and we're not getting reimbursed for it. That's,
Is that because of the fee for service and it happened?
no, it's just the way it's always been, apparently. They've always been paid that way. I just think that they were taking back attendance not over, if you weren't over 80%, they would recoup those funds. They stopped doing that a few years ago. So we're looking at that now to see what that is. And we don't want a hardship on the providers either. Because it's not their fault that DDSN stopped doing what they were supposed to do. We just need to make sure that the rates are adequate. So when it does go fee for service, they know that not everybody's gonna show up every day. And they can still make it. It's gotta be viable. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, I don't know the average rate, so that, that might be accurate. I know I looked at it overall, and we're short a little over $20 million for fiscal 19 when I analyzed all the band payments going out, all the residential billing, the day program billing, and all waiver services, because that's bundled in the rate. So I got my going out the door, my coming in the doors, and 20+ million short.
So those ships have passed the night a long time ago to get to that number.
And when we say we have a revenue problem, that's an example of why we're saying that. We're not, there's nothing wrong with what we're paying out, we're just not getting it back on the other end. All right, any other questions?
All right, thank you, Chris.
I was trying to end on a positive note, so I said, we're having that holiday fair. Been shot there.
Next, I'd like to get an update from Lori Manos on the waiver case management.
All right, thanks for letting me come talk to you guys today. Just as a little history, you'll recall that we implemented waiver case management at the direction of DHHS on July 1st. So we kind of have a quarter of that behind us. Prior to the implementation of waiver case management, we were billing Medicaid targeted case management for people in the waivers. So one of the things that happened was the contact requirements with people basically doubled. We went from bi-monthly contact, face-to-face every 6 months and face-to-face in the home every year to kind of doubling that to monthly contact, quarterly face-to-face and face-to-face in the home every 6 months, okay? Standards were written, approved, and implemented prior to July 1st. We did a training blast that was kind of statewide. We also Skyped some trainings, and we have a training that's recorded and posted. It still sits on the DDSN portal for anybody who wants to watch it. One of the big things that happened with waiver case management implementation is DHHS moved to the market rate. They were paying DDSN kind of a higher rate that was $162 an hour for people without travel and with travel and 156 without travel, and they moved those rates to $100 and $62, and those became pass-through rates. Prior to July 1st, providers were receiving a monthly prospective payment for all of their waiver people.
138.
They were receiving 139 and some change, right? That's what they were getting prior to that. So in order for a provider to kind of get to that point of 139, they generally need to bill 4 to 5 hours of their day that they're on duty. They typically work 7.5 to 8 hours a day. For the past 15 months, DDSN has been providing reports to providers and providing reports to you guys in your binder that were comparisons from what the market rate revenue was compared to the monthly prospective payment they were getting, okay, for waiver people. We weren't really giving them anything related to non-waiver people. So we actually sent it out in October for August and September. We developed some new metrics that give them an average revenue per consumer for both waiver and non-waiver people. Okay, so this will allow them to compare their average revenue revenue per consumer to waiver people to that 139 that they were getting, but it'll also allow them to account for the revenue that they're getting for non-waiver consumers. Okay, so y'all have those new reports in your binder. For August and September, the average revenue per waiver consumer, in August it was $111.22, in September it was $106.70. For non-waiver people, it was $76.28 in August and $76.28 in August and $71.68 in September. And then we kind of gave them an average of all consumers. We do expect that the revenue per consumer will change month to month. There's all kinds of reasons for that. But, you know, at this point, for the last 2 months, that's kind of where we are. Some of the things that we did to prepare for this change is we did formal technical assistance visits with the providers that were like below 50% of that 139. Okay, so we kind of went out individually and met with them. Additionally, we did system-wide training for 28 provider case management staff on billable activities and how to enter stuff in service notes. And then we analyzed simulated billing errors prior to the ramp up of the July 1 implementation. As of today, we have 3 providers that have ended their contract for case management. DSN Advocates terminated their contract on May 31st. Fairfield DSN Board transitioned all of their active case management cases as of July 1st, and then Colleton DSN Board terminated their case management contract and transitioned all their active cases as of August 31st. As of this date, we don't have any notification that anybody else on terminating. The first invoices for retrospective payment were run in August for July, right? Because they're retrospective. So DDSN staff actually analyzed the first full invoice system in August and provided individual data to each provider based on their first month billing. So we actually did, we went into each provider, we ran their invoices, we ran their error report, and we gave them, this is what's going on with your invoices, and this is how you correct every error, okay? After we finished that, we issued procedures for providers to individually do that analysis for any invoices moving forward, and we are also available for any technical assistance. to those providers. The actual invoice analysis went very smoothly. Providers, did a really good job, and we had a lot of good conversation. Some analysis from the August and September invoice. In waiver case management, again, the average per consumer was $111 approximately for August 2019 and $107 for September 2019. Keep in mind that the average revenue per consumer for waiver case management was $55 in May 2018, right? So they have basically more than doubled the revenue per consumer in a year, a little more than a year. The billing errors and the Medicaid ineligibles are also minimal in the reports. If you can kind of see those percentages, I won't sit here and read them to you, but it's very minuscule of the people that are having Medicaid problems. We've implemented a process here where we're looking at any Medicaid mismatches that we have with DHHS. We get a tape. So we're trying to just correct those errors for people where we can.
Oh, and I also got to say, prior to July 1, Lori found a box of Medicaid mismatches. I mean, it was a box.
It was this tall.
And it had like names on a sheet of paper. She corrected all of it. Well,
it wasn't just me. It was so many people in my area. Yeah, so many people.
And everybody got a stack of papers, and they went through and they literally corrected errors that have been out there for years.
So I got the error report this month and it's this big.
Yeah.
So really it was just a matter of kind of getting in there and working on some of those Medicaid ineligible.
I just have to say thank you to that, because that was.
It was a whole group of people here at this office. That was not me,
and
not just me.
You discovered it.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't, that report would have been so much different if she had not done that, because there would have been a lot of folks kicked out because of Medicaid number issues.
Yeah. We still have some template errors. I think I talked to you guys about the way our system works. If you're going to bill for waiver case management, you have to use a waiver case management template. If you're going to bill for non-waiver case management, you have to use the non-waiver case management template. Case managers are still getting a little used to the template, so the percentage of errors is a little bit more for template errors. The good news is the template errors can be corrected and they can get paid the next month, right? So that's part of the analysis.
So when you say that's basically them using the wrong template, they switch.
Correct. So if I was working on a waiver consumer and I did the note on a non-waiver template, it'll come out in my invoice as I didn't get paid error, but all I have to do is go in and delete the previous note and add it in on the right template, and I get paid for it the next month. Now, it's kind of tedious work for the case manager, but I think the further we get down the line, the less errors we'll see on templates. That template thing is a new thing for them, and so, I think we'll have less of those. The template errors.
The template is not a billable.
Right, that's what I mean. Making that error correction is not billable, so it takes time away from them to do it.
So it behooves people not to make the error.
Correct. One of the other things that we've seen as an opportunity for increased revenue is we've been tracking the number of waiver consumers that don't have a contact during the month. Because remember, I told you that monthly contact is required. In August, we had a drop where we only had 2.9% of waiver people that didn't have contact. That's still too many, right? Okay, but it was less than it was the month before. But then it jumped back up in September to 4.7. So we're gonna have to do some legwork to try to figure out, there's kind of a couple problems there. Number one, it's a loss of revenue, but number two, it's a compliance issue because we're supposed to be having monthly contact with these folks.
But you can see why the September revenue was
Right.
not due with this question.
Right. Do y'all have any questions about the waiver case management rollout?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Do the monthly, quarterly visits,
Mhm.
do they have to be face-to-face or can they be Skype?
So HHS will not allow us to use technology to do face-to-face contact. When we were writing policy, we went back and forth 100 times because Skype is a great thing, right? Particularly for people who have trouble meeting with folks.
Yeah.
The last word that we got from HHS is they cannot allow you to use Skype or those types of systems because of HIPAA violations. The way they explained it to me was any of those FaceTime, Skype are actually tapes, and that go back and forth. And the only way that you could do face-to-face and it be HIPAA compliant is like the technology that they use for telemedicine, if any of y'all have ever done that. So none of that technology exists within our system. So the answer is no, it's gotta be face-to-face, can't be Skype.
The 3 providers that you mentioned requested to end their service, I believe.
Mhm.
How many clients does that represent between those 3?
Probably all total, it's approximately 350, 400. They're all very small.
Yeah, the first one was a one-person shop.
Right. The first one was 1 person, the second one was 2 people,
Okay.
and the third one was 2 people.
So where's the 350 people come from?
So the 350, case managers, and each case manager has about 50 people, right? So the first one was 1 guy who had like 70 cases.
Okay, gotcha.
And then the second one was 2 people who had 50 each.
Right. Okay. Do we have private providers or additional providers in those markets ready to take those?
Sure. So in all 3 cases, the providers have notified us ahead of time. This is part of their contract that they want to end their contract. We have a process that we send them about how they end their contract. And in that process, they have to give us a transition plan that notifies us how they're going to offer choice of provider to each one of the people that they serve. In 2 cases, Fairfield and Colleton, they actually held provider fairs, so they invited all their active consumers and all providers who were active in their county to come, and they had a fair where people could meet folks. The first one, he kind of said he was out, so DDSN actually made contact with each one of those people to offer choice. So he didn't really follow that process, but. So yeah, in all cases, we had people take the cases. We didn't have any issue with there not being a provider available.
I am concerned about that number of 562 consumers that have reported a number.
That's actually the most that we've had since we
started.
Yeah.
Because it was higher, it was like around 400 in July,
was.
which was the first month.
Right.
Which I would expect that to be probably, people just getting used to having to make that contact, that should be the highest. It should go down from there. That jump in September concerns me, because it means that's, and again, not for the revenue as much, I'm sure the providers care about the revenue, but I'm worried about compliance with the actual service.
Well, what does it take to generate a reportable note? Is it possible that they're being contacted, but it's not a sufficient contact to generate a reporting note?
No, I mean, actually in our system, it's more as it's there if it's not there. In other words, if the note is in the file, it gets counted. If it's, because we're not looking at the content of the note, they're looking at that there's actual documentation put into the file. Am I correct?
Yeah.
That's what brings.
So the requirement is a monthly contact with the person or their parent, guardian, whoever takes care of them, right?
It could be phone call.
Yes,
Or,
yes.
or email.
Or face-to-face, or, right, right, yeah.
Those.
It's basically the requirement from HHS is you have communication with the waiver participant or the person who cares for them. And that's what's missing for 562 people in September.
So we'll watch the next number go up and see if it has a technical.
One of the things that happened in September that could have had a bearing, and, you know, we haven't drilled it all the way down, but there was the hurricane, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not sure if.
And that includes if it's a quarterly, it happened to be the quarterly visit month.
Right, it's any of it.
Happened to be that.
Any
A lot of kids are back in school, so it's been harder for case managers to work around a school schedule and a parent schedule and
We've
see
had that
face to
question
face.
come up, someone asked me, she goes, well, I just, you know, it was actually a case manager, I can't, you know, they're in school, and I said, I'm sorry, you know, sometimes visits have to be in the evening, or maybe a Saturday, you know, you have to get with the family and find out what's convenient for them. It's not, I think the thought process is that case management is 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and that is not the case.
Right.
It's not that kind of job.
So like my case manager, Ryan's case manager, texted me this morning, I was driving here, That's a perfectly acceptable way for me, for
For
us to
sure.
communicate information. Did that generate a recordable note?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
As long as they document that note.
Right.
Yeah, they can't just, they have to document the substance of the note in the file. That is.
Yeah, it's really about the case manager touching base with the family and or the waiver participant every month to make sure something's going on. And like the quarterly face-to-face, it's a minimum of quarterly face-to-face. You can go see somebody at their house every month, and that meets the monthly contact requirement, right? You can do it by phone, you can do it by Skype if it's not the face-to-face requirement. So like you can have a Skype meeting with somebody to meet the monthly contact requirement. You just can't use that as the requirement that you saw the person.
So if a consumer is not getting that contact that they know now they're supposed to be getting because they follow this, know what changes have been in place, to ask, someone, why have I not gotten that contact? Who should they call? Like, what number should they call to say, I haven't had any face-to-face in 6 months with or
Yeah,
I'm not hearing
they can call my number, and my number's on the website under the case management stuff, or they can just call the front desk.
And the first call, that person should be to the provider agency.
If they know
I
who
would
to
like
call
them to
there.
follow the chain of command because,
Gotcha.
I've been out there as a provider and I want to know if my case manager's not doing something.
To provider first, but if
Provider
provider
first, and then they
doesn't
can
call
always
them
call
back,
up here. Yes.
then here, okay.
Ma'am, do we have any statistics prior to us making the change? What percentage of consumers do not have a reportable note on a monthly basis?
No, but I imagine it was much higher.
25.
We could look at that.
25%.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Well, we also saw that, that they were only getting 6 hours.
Right, I was getting ready to say, one of
case
the,
management in a year. That was the biggest metric we had.
the numbers per year of case management, so the average, when we started writing policy for waiver case management, one of the things that HHS threw out was the average amount of case management provided to a waiver participant is 6 hours in a year. Well, HHS put limits into waiver case management. They're soft limits. They're 40 units a quarter, which is 10 hours for a 3-month period. And they thought that was very generous because 6 hours a year is what our average was. We actually had over 400 people ask for additional time, over 10 hours in a quarter. So, we know that people are getting more contact, more service.
Our job is to start reading those notes and making sure that they're actually billable activity going on. So now it's about QA and what's coming in.
Right, and continuing to give, we did extend the 60% safety net. And when we initially did that safety net, we estimated it was going to cost us like $250,000 a month, and it actually has been costing us like $25,000, right? So there's
Productivity has really
people are really stepping up, but we're continuing to try to help providers understand and learn and know what they can bill for, and be confident in what they're doing. So, we're continuing to do training and continuing to do technical assistance to help folks out with that.
What's the barrier for the ones that you sort of consistently been seeing at the very bottom? And there's a couple, there's some very small ones that sort of, you have one large, a couple of medium. What's the barrier?
So I don't think there's one thing. If there was one thing, it would be a really easy fix. The issues are different every place that you go. In some circumstances, it's around number of cases that they have. So if you think about it from this standpoint, our system used to have a minimum case or a maximum caseload size. Basically, we said you got to have this many cases per case manager. But the truth of the matter is, particularly in the retrospective world, a case doesn't equal a case. You can have one person who lives in residential and goes to the day program and he's been there for the last 30 years and he's got great family support, and that person doesn't need a lot of case management. So the amount of service that's provided to them and ultimately the amount of revenue that comes from that is much less than a person who's newly injured in Haskell, who doesn't know a thing about anything, and the case manager's having to truly walk that family through every resource that's out there and provide education about what's going on with the person. So, you know, some of it is caseload issues and the kind of the way that it's always been set up. And then some of the rural areas, so let's say they do determine, well, yeah, we don't have enough cases. Well, then there's not cases sitting around waiting for you, right? So a lot of it is that. Some of it is education and people getting used to it. Some of it is, you know, people learning to account for their time accurately. I think a lot of times people would guess, you know, kind of. I think it took me this long when they really didn't sit down and determine it took this long. You know, there's all kinds of reasons, but all we can try to do is support, you know, the people who are not there yet and try to get them there.
So, but I want to make sure we're not putting that in place again for that caseload size where we used to be, you had 50 people and that was it. We've removed that.
We've removed that. We don't have a minimum caseload.
So it's not more based on their hours.
And we've been saying that from the start of this whole process. The caseloads are based on the case needs. And if some people you're gonna need to have less, and some people you're gonna have a lot more, depending on who their people are.
Caseload management's kind of huge too, because, you know, if you're in a big place, like Rich Lakes, for example, in the metropolitan area, it's really easy for them to put caseloads together based on locations and type of person and specialization. When if you have a caseload in Allendale County, you've got a mix of everybody from one end of the county to the other on the same caseload because you don't have enough cases to put them into slots. So, you know, there's just a lot of work that has to be done. What's interesting is there are some small counties that are doing really well. There are some small counties that are struggling too. So I think that the challenge is to try to figure out. We encourage counties to talk to one another.
And then we found in a few places that bad habits are hard to break.
Sure.
Really hard to break for some folks.
Sure.
And then managers, if you're reluctant to try to enforce breaking those habits, it's going to show in your productivity. But I mean, truthfully, and I know that some people are very concerned that DDSN is spending money on the safety net. And I thank them for caring about our resources, but remember, not too long ago, we were losing $3.5 million to case management because of low productivity and money that we were spending that we were not being able to, again, get the revenue back from HHS. So although I appreciate their concern about our bottom line, I think compared to what we were losing, 25 grand is nothing. And the goodwill it would generate to say, we're going to keep helping you do this, but at some point we're going to have to say, maybe it's time for you not to do this. If you can't change your habits and you can't change your way of thinking, let's see if we can find other providers who can do this. But right now, we're not at that point. We're still trying to do technical assistance and get them. They have not voiced their concern to say, we're giving this up. So.
I think providers have done a lot of work to really try their best to do the best that they can. And, you know, we talk to them regularly. We try to do everything we can to help. So, you know, I think it's just one of those things where people really feel like they can get there. It's just it's a big change in their thought process. You know, 2 years ago, the idea was, I've got these things I have to do, and as long as I document these, it doesn't really matter if I document anything else, you know, and so we kind of switched that to, you got to make sure that you document every single thing that you do.
I just want to make sure we're not putting sort of, we're being pulled out.
No, even though we've said that a million times, there's no caseload high or low. It's basically based on what you need to do for these folks that are on your caseload. We still have people think, I got 45 cases, you're not giving me any more, you know, so I think, again, it is a mindset of people who've been doing this for a very long time that's got to For some, they're still not there, but for the most part, we've seen great improvements in everything. So.
And I think the more technology that we can provide to allow them to do their jobs better, the better off that will be. You know, some of the time that they waste is standing at the fax machine and that kind of thing. So hopefully we'll get there as well.
That would help with the authorization coming through for their automatic,
We have a new electronic authorization system that we're implementing November 1st, so we'll be doing training for that for the next 2 weeks. And that's gonna hopefully increase a lot of their productivity around the authorizations for folks.
and accountability for those authorizations, because they gotta be done every year.
Do y'all have any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lori.
All right, if we could have a early intervention update, Joyce.
Absolutely. How are you? I'm fighting a bit of a cold or something, so I apologize for that. Am I supposed to work this clicker? I've never done that before.
Here you go. Yes, you're supposed to click it.
We're gonna give it a try. Auntie's over there. You can't help me out.
Just take it next, and we'll go.
We'll give it a try. How about that? So I am always so excited to talk to you about early intervention. I have a love and a passion for the children that we serve, and I hope that you do as well. Early intervention, I'll do that. We provide, look at that. There we go. So, in early intervention, we're providing 2 distinct services for our kids. It is family training, which is the direct interaction one-on-one with children and families. And we provide service coordination, which is a lot like case management, but a little bit different. We're currently serving almost 3,000 children just in our 3 to 6 population. It's a lot, right? 3,000 children. I'm growing at about 50 or so children, 56 or so consumers a month. So that we've grown 700 consumers just from June of 2018 to June of 2019. Think about that. 700 different consumers and families that we touch. In a year, that's how much we've grown. And grown by about 120 just over June, July, and August of this year.
And that's why we have it in the budget.
And it should be in the budget because it's such an important thing that we do. But I wanted to give you a chance to put a face to some of the consumers that we serve. These are actual consumers, a couple of guys from Rich Lakes and a couple of guys from Bright Star. Thank you guys for letting me set those off your website. To tell you that these aren't just numbers, it's not just 3,000 children. It's 3,000 families. It's your family and my family and, Pat's family. It's children that we go into their homes and we touch them, not physically, but literally. No, we don't physically touch them. We interact with them.
Language change.
Strike that over there. We interact with the families, with the children, and providing a value-added service that helps these babies to learn and grow and develop to their full potential. And I think it's just the most wonderful thing in the world. So not only do we support our families, we also support our providers. And we do that by offering some kind of specialized things from here. I didn't put my slide here. Rufus and Ben and I have weekly calls with DHHS, and that's so that we can work in a joint team for those children who are also 0 to 3. We coordinate our services and we work collaboratively in order to make sure that there's seamless services for our children. They shouldn't know any different if they're getting a service from a baby net child or from a child who's DDSN eligible. And we also provide in-house support for our EIs. We have been doing monthly work groups where we'd come here once a month and kind of hash out the issues that were going on in early intervention. We're transitioning that to a more quarterly model unless the need comes up to do more monthly work groups. We also have quarterly counterpart meetings that are with the EI supervisors. Those are in a face-to-face regional meetings. And we offer support and technical assistance here as our EIs need it, either by Skype, on the phone. they'll come here in person, or we'll go there and provide technical assistance and training as needed to our early intervention providers. I'm sorry, my voice is trying to go. And I think that is just about all I have on my list, but I would love to entertain questions that you have.
Are we still having problems with, I'm just gonna call out the elephant in the room, the issues with the HHS billing, the way, where are they on solving their problems with the baby net billing, not the 3 to 6?
Our
baby net.
our 3 to 6 billing's pretty good.
Yeah, we're not having any complaints about it.
That is good. Well, they're doing some changes, Mary, with their small unit roll-up, which has been an issue. The small unit roll-up is where units less than 8 minutes, those minutes didn't accrue throughout the day. So once system integration occurs, hopefully November, towards the end of the year, between the bridges system where you enter your service notes and the Medicaid system, once that system is fully integrated, then DHHS plans to go back and grab and accrue those minutes of less than 8 minutes into units and go back and retrospectively pay providers for those units that weren't accrued and then pay them for the small unit roll-up going forward.
I have a question about, I understand the small unit roll-up, which is if they have those units during the day that just under those 8 minutes.
Yes.
But if you have a unit, if you've got 20-minute phone call or 20-minute activity, and then you have another unit later on for 5 minutes or 6 minutes, if there's not another small unit to grab that and roll it up, that 20-minute unit should really be 2 units versus 1 unit, no? So I call it the large unit roll-up. I don't know what else to call it since they use the roll-up thing.
Should it, I know that was not my term. Should it be? I don't know if it should be, but I can tell you that it will not be.
Okay.
My understanding is that once a unit is formed by those 20 minutes, that will be a standalone 1 unit.
Right.
Because the first unit is 8 to 23 minutes. If you have another small amount of time for 5 minutes, then that unit, this time does not add into that unit that's already existing. It will only be an accrual of the units that are less than 8 throughout the day.
Afterwards, yes.
Yes.
So you see what I'm talking about, that
Yes,
1
I do.
unit should have been 2 units. So did they not think of that, or did they think of that and reject it, or you don't know?
I would not like to speak to what DHS was thinking
They
about.
probably didn't think about it, because I didn't think about it until we started talking to some of those providers and
It's a
looking
very
at that
valid
sheet.
point.
Because I didn't think about it either. I thought the small unit roll-up would handle it, so they might not have thought about it. I'll bring that up in my meeting. I don't know if they can grab it. I have no idea.
And I do have some information on that I can share with you if you want.
Yep. I mean, technology is as much as a burden as it is a help sometimes when there's things you can and cannot do in that. But let's find out.
And these, this system integration with the payment of those units won't be until the system integration with Medicaid.
I know. So that would be a retrospective payment based on their cleanup after they do the integration?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, that was easy enough. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, 100%. Thank you, Joyce.
Next up we wanted to discuss was the meeting dates in November, December. We have in previous years adjusted those dates based upon holiday plans and scheduling and things like that. Currently, our November date is set for the 21st, which is the week before Thanksgiving. Our December date is set for the 19th. Any desire on part of any commissioner to adjust those dates? Okay. Just wanted to make sure that we were okay for everybody as far as that goes. Still good? Okay. All right. Okay. I think that takes care of all the informational sessions that we had for today. There was a legislative committee meeting planned for 1 o'clock today. We are having to postpone that particular meeting because of some conflict with commissioners. That will be rescheduled probably in the first part of November when the 3 of us get together and find the time to do that. And so we will send out notice of when that is rescheduled to. We're going to cancel the 1 o'clock
subcommittee meeting that is currently.
Any other matters to come before the commission and make?
I just want to remind everybody here and on the phone that at 2 o'clock, we'll be having a meeting with our executive directors, the CEOs out in the community providers. And we have guests coming. The community DMH providers will be here. The executive directors of the community mental health centers will be coming here to kind of meet their counterparts. And hopefully, because that's always been a burr in my saddle about having not a relationship with DMH. You know, some counties have got a good relationship, especially if like your husband works there or something. But other than that, we've been having some problems with having a decent relationship with the mental health clinics and not working with our folks. So we wanted to let everybody have a chance to meet and greet those folks and start working on some projects together. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much. Done for the day.